everyone, welcome back to GameSpot. I am Mike. I am here with the creative director at Capy. This is Kris Piotrowski, and you just as of right before we started recording announced a release date for the game.
Yes, yeah, it's coming out next week on the 14th.
Yep.
And we just announced a trailer, and so it's been a long time coming, and so I'm feeling a little bit nervous and ants are crawling all over my body.
It's been over 5 years, right?
Yeah, it's been over 5 years.
Wow.
You know, there's a little bit of time before that as well in prototyping and sort of the early stages of the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been a long haul for sure.
Cool.
So it's nice to have it coming together now, and yeah, looking forward to the release. Even though I am personally going through an emotional turmoil.
Well, hopefully that shakes out well, but
yeah.
I'm glad you brought the game in. So we've got the game. We kind of skipped over, you said like a 4-minute-ish intro starting from the beach.
Yeah, so the beginning, we just sort of skipped the kind of intro moments, just because it's a nice little sailing sequence that probably plays better in your living room in the middle of the night than it does on a Twitch stream when you want to see some cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, we're beginning the game almost at the beginning. This is the south shore of the island where the whole game takes place inside the subterranean depths of this world.
Okay.
So it's just a little bit past the beginning.
Gotcha. And so yeah, like you've shown the game a lot throughout the past 5 years in varying states of completion or lack thereof. But for those who don't know, what's like the elevator pitch for Below?
Below is sort of like a combination of roguelike sort of dungeon crawling mixed with a little bit of like a Zelda-style adventure world design.
Okay.
So it's not 100% procedurally generated. It has randomly generated dungeons that kind of interconnect into like little pockets of handcrafted little spaces that you can find and discover that are found within those randomly generated moments. I've also described it, I mean, we were sort of, our little tagline is a solitary journey through the haunted depths of a forbidden isle.
There you go.
So that's the game, that's the elevator pitch. Yeah, that's it. But as far as the kind of game that it is, it heavily leans on roguelikes. Although I guess I should probably call it a roguelike before a bunch of people on the internet get very angry. Rogue fans are very hardcore.
Well, I've been on the receiving end.
Yeah.
I've not been one of those people.
But yeah, as far as the structure of the game goes, it's not completely randomly generated. It's sort of like if you imagine a game like Minecraft, where every time you play, you get a new seed and there's a whole new world for you to explore that you know has a whole different flow. This game is randomly generated in the sort of way that a game like Diablo or Spelunky is, where you know the game has a very specific sort of layer cake structure of zones with levels and stuff like that, and all those levels are randomized, but you will pass through sort of the same layer cake as you go. But the structure of it, like the inner details of it, are brand new every time you die.
Gotcha. And I was gonna say, like, Spelunky is one of those that comes to mind just because literally you're going from the surface deeper throughout the game, at least throughout for when I've seen it Below. I guess as well as like Rogue itself, the original one.
It's a totally classic structure.
Yeah.
Diablo has the same thing. It's like go down until you meet the baddie.
Yep. So that's you said that's like a lantern.
Oh yeah. So what I'm just to sort of mention what I'm doing right now. At the beginning of the game, you find this object called the lantern, and the lantern is sort of the game's. It's the main sort of quest item. So I kind of describe it as Below's Ocarina of Time, in that the whole game is sort of built around this magical object called the lantern that you find at the very surface of the isle. Gotcha. And one of the kind of big ideas in the game, how it all sort of interconnects, is every single time you die in Below, you start as a brand new wanderer arriving on the islands after the previous wanderer's life. So the game world itself, the progress that you make in it is persistent, but the lives themselves are fleeting and short and fragile. So the game really isn't necessarily about having one character that becomes more powerful and becomes kind of like a monster killing machine. But it's really about making a little bit of progress with each life and building on top of that.
Okay.
The one thing about it, though, is that the lantern itself is a specific, unique item in the game. I describe it as sort of like the guiding light for the player. The way it works is that if you go into the world with one wanderer who has the lantern and they die, the lantern is dropped at their corpse, and the only way to retrieve the lantern is to fight your way back to it.
Okay.
So the game kind of goes back and forth between these two modes where, at one moment you do have this lantern. It's helpful. It provides light. It illuminates important details. It helps you recognize traps and dangers and things like that. And then inevitably you lose that lantern. You have to go back into the world without it. And then that's when the systems that are built around like crafting torches and other sources of light become super important.
Okay.
So the game, when you have the lantern, the game's a little bit safer, a little bit easier to play, and is sort of like giving you just a little bit more information. But at some point, you do lose that guiding light, and there's a hard journey to get back to it.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the baton that's shared between lives,
right?
And every character is trying to, or every wanderer is trying to just get back to that lantern and take it deeper and deeper into the game world.
Right. So from what I played the game and from what I've kind of become known for, it doesn't seem to hold your hand much. It's very much up to us to figure out what we're doing, where we're going, kind of. It's not very, maybe there was stuff in the beginning, but I don't think there was, like, in terms of tutorials. You're kind of learning as you go, right?
There really is no tutorials in the game. We have some little things that, like, at the beginning we kind of, we show you, like, hey, this is the button that makes the lantern glow.
Okay.
And like little hints like that, but beyond that, the game is really designed to be kind of like a closed puzzle box.
Sure.
My hope is that I kind of feel like humans take a lot of pleasure, and the human mind is really good at recognizing patterns and figuring out systems. It's something that I think gamers kind of do inherently.
Yeah.
And I know I'm interested in the idea of giving players a game where it says nothing.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is just like a big giant puzzle box that you need to figure out how to unlock as you go. And there is something scary about that idea, obviously, because I think players these days are kind of, a lot of games do hold hands quite a bit, and I'm not knocking that in any way. I think that's totally great. I play those games and love them. But I think there's room. I think there are players who are looking for and would appreciate something that's a little bit quieter and sort of says, hey, this is you're on your own here.
Sure.
I've always found that when I demoed this game at PAX and stuff like that, if I mentioned like, hey, the game has no hints and has no dialogue and no text, that players sort of go like, okay, and then they just sort of lean into the game and try to figure it out.
How sick are you of Dark Souls comparisons?
Oh, I'm not sick of it at all. I think like Dark Souls, the entire Dark Souls series came out during this development, which is really crazy to think about.
That is very nuts.
Yeah, but no, I think that Dark Souls is a really interesting. Like, I don't think Below has. I don't think the Below hasn't been designed to be as difficult when it comes to combat and stuff like that.
Right.
But I think the approach that Dark Souls had, where it sort of, confidently let players loose in the world, and then knew that they're going to learn through trial and error and through dying quite a bit, and just being kind of confident to create a design like that. It's interesting because like one of the things is that like Dark Souls structure and game design is one of the reasons why that game found such a amazing community, right? People immediately, when the game came out, began to talk to each other. Like, where's this? How do you get that? What's the best way to do this? Where's this piece of armor? And all that information came from the community, not from, you know, the game itself. Just sort of telling you, hey, your thing's over there. This is where the thing is. It's a game where everything's just there. It's sitting there for you to try to, you know, figure out how to get there and just discover things through exploration.
So is that like at the forefront of your minds when you were creating Below, as far as kind of creating something that people would talk about and share and discover things in that kind of old school way?
I think the nice thing about Dark Souls is that, yeah, it did give us a bit of confidence in the idea that you can make a game that has like that's very difficult and very very dense in mechanics, and then just let players, like, knowing that players will work together and that kind of thing does engage players in that way, where, you know, somebody finds something and then they go on a forum and share it, and then eventually, like, you know, people start playing with the Wikipedia up and stuff like that. Like when I play Don't Starve, or like when I play Minecraft, I remember like early on just having like the player made, like the fan wiki, and learning from that. So there is definitely something in Below that you know, we designed it kind of intentionally to try to capture that, where really you don't know anything aside from the game's called Below, and you're going down.
Yeah.
Go down. Try to go as far down as you can. But outside from that, the mechanics, you know, the theme of the game, narrative, it's all kind of just a little secret.
Sure.
But I do assume that, you know, day one. Sorry, I almost died there.
I like the overhead vertical jump attack. Reminds me of the Z targeting A attack from Ocarina.
Yeah, the combat was inspired not necessarily by Dark Souls, but by Wind Waker.
Okay.
For me, Wind Waker is like the pinnacle of fun feeling, snappy sort of technical combat that has like a nice playful feel to it, that makes you feel like a little, like Link in Wind Waker feels like a little ninja that can do little backflips, and every little move is just right.
Right up until he stabs Ganon right in the forehead.
Oh, that is one of the greatest things in the world.
It was. But yeah, I can definitely see Wind Waker in this.
Yeah, so the moveset that you have in combat is very similar to Wind Waker. You've got like a little, like a regular hit. You can hold your shield and stab around like this. The shield can be moved around, but if you don't touch the R stick, you can strafe.
Okay.
There's a little shield bash. There's like a running lunge, and a couple of little. There's like a dodge roll as well.
Wow.
So the sword and shield is very much like the bread and butter of the game. But then outside from that, you do have a bow with a bunch of arrows that you can craft. And throughout the game, you do find armor and masks and two-handed weapons. But yeah, the combat was very much influenced by the feel of Wind Waker, where it has that kind of, like, for me, Wind Waker is like a more playful, easier to get into version of like all the same moves that Dark Souls has, kind of.
Right.
So that's been my influence. Zelda for me is my one true love. I'm doing a little bit of crafting here. So in between, I just finished the first level of the game, and in between levels, there's these little quiet spaces for you to sort of take the resources that you found in the game and convert them into soups or potions, or take the materials and turn them into tools like torch or band-aid and stuff like that.
Okay.
So in between each level, there's like a little bit of prep, basically. And the other thing is that the fire pits can be used if you spend crystals, which are in the top right corner.
Gotcha.
You can use them to mark a fire pit for a shortcut.
Okay.
So, and it's not a permanent one. It's one saving grace, basically. So, for example, if I right now go into the next level and die, because I mark that fire, the next life will be able to teleport there from any fire.
Gotcha.
But it's just like it's a one-time use sort of thing.
Okay.
So it's sort of like one chance to get back to your corpse, one chance to get back to your lantern before you have to do it from the top to the bottom again.
So the one-time use kind of makes it a risk-reward where, I mean, obviously, if you can get farther in without using it, you can use it farther into the dungeon and then warp there the next time?
Yes, yeah, you can
Gotcha.
warp there. Yeah, yeah, as you're progressing, you can mark, as long as you have the gems for it.
Right.
You can set up those little shortcuts. There's physical shortcuts in the game as well. So as you play, I'll show that hopefully if I can survive. But as you play and make your way through the world and get deeper into it, you do inevitably find little ways back. You're always constantly poking holes back up to the surface of the island. The island initially begins as sort of like, it has only one path into the world, but very quickly, if you're sort of exploring around, you'll find little ways to pop little holes back in, open up little doorways that were hidden, and then eventually throughout the game, the island surface becomes just like a multi-path nexus for the game world.
Okay.
Little foxes.
Those enemies, are they like crystallized, or is that just like kind of the art direction you're going for? Like I see a few right
These
here.
ones there?
Yeah.
This is sort of like the main faction of enemies in the game, and when you if you attack them, they're the main source for the lantern light. So these little gems that you see that they drop, that's the fuel for the lantern.
Okay.
And the lantern burns fuel by just having it on, like I have right now, but it burns a little bit more fuel when you use the lantern beam.
Okay.
The lantern beam can be used to push away the kind of fog of war here.
Gotcha.
It also has other uses as well, just for like, it's a magical device that has a whole bunch of little functions in the game.
Right.
It also reveals traps with those little red glyphs like that. So when you do lose the lantern, for example, like that little detail there, that red glyph is something that when you come back into the world without it, that's what the trap looks like.
Oh, okay.
With it, it looks like that.
Okay, I was just gonna ask, like,
without it, it looks like that. So those are the two.
Please keep that on.
Those are the two different changes in difficulty as you learn, or as you lose the lantern and get back to it.
So what are some, obviously this is a loaded question because you guys have been working on the game on and off for 5 years, right?
Yeah.
But what are some of the major changes you've made in the home stretch? Or like say like since, I think I was telling you 2015 was the last time I saw the game?
Yeah, that makes sense.
At PAX or something. And I'm curious, like, are there any major changes you made to the formula? Or has it been largely the same since you started?
The formula has been the same. Whoa. Sorry. I died.
You did it on purpose so we could see how the death works.
I actually died fumbling with my inventory, so bad form, but hey. You shouldn't, so here's a pro tip, you should not use the backpack unless you're safe, because the game doesn't pause anything.
Okay.
It's definitely good to do all your, backpack crafting and all that kind of stuff when you've retreated into some sort of safe zone.
Right.
But this gives me an opportunity to show off the way the checkpoints work.
Cool.
And dying in this game is par for the course.
Yeah. Oh yeah, right. You lowered that bridge last time, right?
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, I could use this. I'm going to use this just to get a little bit more resources, but then I'll teleport from the next fire.
Okay.
Jim Guthrie, who did the music for Super Brothers Sword and Sorcery and Planet Coaster and Reigns, Her Majesty, and a bunch of other games, also did the music for this game as well.
That's great.
So you heard that little return to island ditty there.
When you were at a campfire earlier crafting, was that, it sounded like, maybe I was imagining it, maybe it was just the soundtrack playing, but it seemed like when you were combining items, there was like a reactive kind of music.
Yeah, that's a good catch. Yeah, there's a little musical hint system. I don't know if I have any items that I can show this off with right now. I actually don't, but I don't have any items that mix with this. But when I get something, I can do that. But yeah, there's a little bit of there's a couple little notes that if you're crafting, it kind of hints to you that you're on the right track or you're not on the right track.
Okay.
I'm going to use the return to shortcut.
So this will bring you to that one on those zigzagging stairs. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Whoa. I had a weird sit there. So yeah, the shortcuts are just one use. So basically, I have like one easy chance, and it's never quite easy, but one easier shot to return to the corpse of the previous wanderer,
Okay.
and to retrieve the lantern. And if I mess up here, then I'm just back to the top, and I have to.
Okay.
So I can check my map here, and it shows me that my lantern is a little bit over to the right.
Okay.
That little red dot there.
Right.
And there's a corpse as well. So you can use the mini map to track whether where the items are that you're looking for.
So you said you screw up here, you'll go back to the beginning and then you won't have the shortcut, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah. But any physical shortcuts you open up.
Right, like the bridge will still be
Exactly.
lower.
Yeah. So in this level, there's also another little hidden shortcut. So if I manage to open that, I'll be able to retrieve, to return to here pretty quickly.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, the game does still have kind of like a hardcore roguelike rule set. So when these sort of helpful shortcuts ever go away, you do end up kind of back at the top. And the lantern never moves. It's something that is permanently in the place that you dropped it.
Sure.
So the thing about that is that the game ends up being sort of very naturally becoming harder and harder, because if you get really deep into the game world and lose the lantern, whoa, oh my goodness.
Tell me after you kill these guys.
Yeah, I'll talk to you guys later.
Is that a trap right there, that rope?
That's a very early trap. Yeah, it's just sort of like intro to trap. So if you run across this little trap, it trips you, and it gives,
gotcha.
like, if there's enemies around, you'll pay for it.
Yeah.
You can also cut it with a little slash attack.
Oh, then you get rope too. Okay.
So it's just kind of like a non-lethal, hey, there's traps and you should watch out for them. And then after that, we sort of start nailing you with the lethal stuff, such as that.
Yeah, just trying to get...
You can also use traps against enemies, which is what just happened there. I'm not sure if it was noticeable, but that when I attacked that enemy, it dodged into a trap.
Okay. So the corpse is in this area, right? I believe.
See, I think the corpse and the lantern are here. Yeah.
Okay.
These little fire pits, or these little fire pillars right here, they provide a little bit of light, which is important. The game does get darker and darker as you get deeper. It gets colder as well. It gets more devoid of resources as it gets deeper. So this little cave area with, growing grass and so this is the corpse that when you get to your corpse, you can pick up the lantern.
Okay. You're giving me all these achievements. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah. And you can also pick up all of your loot as well.
Okay.
But you only have one shot to do that. So after one attempt, the corpse disappears and all of its loot disappears as well. But the lantern itself stays permanently.
The lantern will always be here until you retrieve it?
Until you pick it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's
the way to think about it is that it is kind of like a little baton that you're trying to pick up and take further.
But like to your earlier point, if you get super deep into the dungeon, the lantern is going to be very far down, so the game's going to be harder because you have to get that far without the dungeon, or without the lantern.
Without the lantern, yeah. So there's a lot of different mechanics for lights. Like there's obviously the torch, there's a couple pieces of gear that also generate light. But also if you don't have any light at all, you can just drop your crystals on the ground and sort of like just tippy-toe your way through the game. Okay. But if you notice, when I kill enemies, they drop light as well. Right. So if I don't pick up, so right now I'm not using any of my own light source. Okay. But just by not picking up the collectibles, I can die super fast. Just by not picking up the collectibles, you can sort of illuminate the environment.
That's a really nice touch. I like that a lot.
So the nice thing about that is that really deep into the game, if you are looking for the lantern, you can also pick up the ones that you dropped as well. Mm-hmm. but if, for example, like if I don't have a lantern, I don't have a torch or anything like that, I could still kind of go like, you know.
Okay.
And then maybe
to illuminate traps,
yeah,
etc.
maybe like aggro one of these guys into my little light zone.
He's not falling for it.
And I'll just kill him.
Yeah. Brute force.
If the arrows land anywhere on the actual level, you can pick them back up.
Okay.
So, and the arrows are craftable. There's a whole bunch of different kinds. There's bombs and flares and things like that. So the bow and arrow and the sword and shield are the kind of core, you know. And then around that, there's a whole bunch of different kinds of gear and loot and stuff like that to help you out.
And so you were saying, of course, Capy has released other stuff throughout these 5 years. Obviously, it was Super Time Force.
Yep.
You worked on the Don't Starve. I'm forgetting the name right now.
Don't Starve Shipwrecked.
Shipwrecked. Yes.
Yep.
So you've been busy, to say the least.
Yeah, I mean, I've been primarily focused on this.
Yeah.
I helped with Super Time Force, especially at the ending of the project. Don't Starve and OKKO were primarily made by a separate team.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, thanks to those projects, this project was able to stay in the oven a little bit longer.
Cool.
So that's generally how we've operated the studio. We've always sort of had a couple projects on the go, and there's always like one project that's the Capy project, and an original project, and then every once in a while, if we need it, we do kind of like Don't Starve was a really great opportunity. OKKO was an awesome opportunity that came to us as well. So if it comes along, if those things come along, every once in a while we do entertain working on contract work.
So did you work with Clay much, or was it like, did they kind of just hand off Don't Starve to you for in its entirety to say, hey, this is yours?
The Don't Starve Shipwreck was interesting because they gave us sort of free reign in terms of theming the game, and so the whole concept, the shipwreck concept, and the sort of mechanics in that was pitched to Clay and designed by Capy.
Okay.
So we came up with the idea and sort of the concepts behind it, and then they let us roll with it.
Cool.
Yeah, so it was a really good, positive project for us. There's some things that we learned on that project that overlap with this project a little bit. Because this does have a little bit of survival. This isn't a game that has extensive endless crafting lists or anything like that. The crafting is really just sort of a support system.
Right.
So just opening up another little shortcut here.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how I mean, I can already kind of see, like you said, I can see the Don't Starve influence on this and vice versa, Shipwrecked, but it'd be interesting to see kind of how those different projects might have fed into this throughout its lifespan, development lifespan.
This game was midway through its development when we started working on Don't Starve, so the influence is very minimal. Okay. If anything, I would say the concept of Shipwrecked is taken from this game.
Right. Okay.
As a little they're both thematically similar to this. What was that? Oh, sorry. But yeah, the way it sort of helped us is, if you ever spend time balancing a survival game, it kind of it just helps you think about the right things, and know what to be aware of, and know what to worry about. No, I got no crafting opportunities here.
So is that floor key to the next floor down?
Yeah, so the game's kind of structure, some of the structure is very, very, very classic. Every floor has a key that you need to find, and it has the door to the next level. And then within that level, there's also little secret areas. But in order to sort of progress downwards, you do have to sort of explore enough of the world to find the key and then to find the doorway. Those are just kind of like the very fundamental goals on each level.
Sure.
Find key, find an exit kind of thing. And then built around that are just a whole bunch of weird little mechanics.
Okay. Is there any like lore behind the relationship between the separate wanderers, or is it just like an island that draws people to it?
There's a lot of background lore just in terms of my own sort of world building and things like that.
Yeah.
But that's exactly how I would describe it, actually.
Okay.
Like, one of the sort of concepts in the game is, at least for me, the idea behind these wanderers appearing on the island. I've always sort of thought about it as like moths to a flame kind of thing.
Okay.
Where in this world there's this island in the middle of the ocean that's guarded by these standing stones, and some of its energy seeps out and afflicts wanderers and draws them in.
Okay.
That's the concept.
Gotcha.
Narratively, it's a very but that's never expressed inherently in the game.
From there, it's pretty minimal.
It's just
the game itself.
yeah, it's just sort of some humans are drawn to this island for one reason or another,
Right.
And that's pretty much all you know.
Ah, there you go. Did he just try to attack you and then you baited him into the
Yeah, I
trap?
sort of just like knew he was going to attack in my direction and baited him into the trap.
It's like you made this game.
Yeah, it's almost like I knew exactly what he was going to do. Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. You're skilled.
I mean, knowledge is skill.
Yeah.
Right? So if you play the game enough, you can get a sense for it like any other game.
Sure.
And understand the timings of things and how to take advantage of certain things. I would suggest that players play the game slowly and carefully.
Yeah.
If you were to run into, like a crowd of enemies, you're always only a couple of hits from being completely annihilated.
Yeah.
And the game has a bleeding mechanic, so when you do take a hit, unless you can fix that with a craftable Band-Aid or bandage, I always make that mistake.
I like that. It's like a Band-Aid logo in the menus, though, right?
Yeah, it is.
It's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah, little modern touch.
Yeah.
Just stylistic stuff. But yeah, when you get hit, you do start to bleed, and so there's a bunch of different ways that you can solve that. You can craft. You can craft items, and you can also cauterize your wounds with fire as well, Rambo styles.
I'm into it.
Yeah.
It's a very lonely game.
Yeah, it is. I think that's one thing I'm kind of happy with, though. I think there's like a certain feeling in the game that I think it captures pretty well.
Right.
How are we doing for time?
Want to go like another 5 minutes? Something like that? Or
Sure.
is there something you don't want to show yet?
I kind of don't want to show this.
Okay, cool. No, that's completely
But
fine.
I could go into a different area, or I can just play a little bit longer. I can just like continue.
Sure, yeah, maybe like a couple more minutes.
Yeah, so
you
I
definitely showed
won't-
us a good chunk, though.
Yeah, I'm not going to go this way,
Okay,
but there's one more area here that I could try to get to.
I imagine it must be weird / tough demoing this game because of how much, or maybe not how much it relies on, but because of how much it's centered on letting the player figure it out. I almost, if I was you, I also wouldn't want to show too much.
Yeah, I find that every time I'm saying, like I'm mentioning even details about like how the lantern works and all that kind of stuff, those are all the kinds of details that I hope players will just figure out on their own over time, just through experimentation or through community help and that kind of stuff. So
I feel like it's one of those games where like people say like, oh, I wish I could go back, like erase my memory of Dark Souls and go back and play it again for the first time, or some like even Ocarina, like before you discovered all those secrets that you can't forget no matter how hard you try.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. I recently played. I played Breath of the Wild when it first came out.
Yeah.
And it was just such a delight to go through that world, not knowing anything about it.
I almost always want to play that game.
Yeah, I played that game without any quick travel or any UI or anything.
Yeah.
So I played it for like 400 hours or something like that. Something really insane.
You get along with Rob, our video producer here, or our video manager. He has put a lot of time into that as well. Well, I guess we all have, but it sounds like you guys have put equal amounts.
Yeah, I completely fell in love with that game, and it was just really nice. Yeah, to experience that kind of like fresh Zelda world. There's nothing quite like it.
It's fascinating because I feel like in the time you've been making this game, like several, like including Breath of the Wild, and even to some extent like Red Dead Redemption 2 have kind of gone for that survival, maybe not survival focus, but definitely heavy survival elements. And it seems like a lot, it's funny to see like big AAA developers going for that now as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the ideas that we sort of started out with have over the years become quite prevalent. But I think that's good. It just it just means that people, when they approach this game fresh and ooh.
Oh, wow. Did he just spawn a little smaller one? Or
no, that guy came from above.
Gotcha.
He was sort of crawling in there slowly.
Right.
Whoop.
Oh, there they are.
I'm pretty good at this game.
Yeah. Good job.
Ooh, I didn't notice I was starving.
What, oh, I see, yeah,
up there, there's a little, like in the top left corner, there's the survival interface.
Okay.
So the way that works is that there's a top element, which is the heart, and the heart is your HP, which is basically represents like a bottle full of blood, basically. If you get hit, it drains blood. And then tethered to that is hunger, temperature, and thirst.
Okay.
So if any of those stats go down, then it begins to drain on the heart.
Okay.
And soup, for example, just basic soup will heal, will give you a little bit of temperature, like it'll warm you up a bit. It gives you a little bit of everything.
Sure.
But then within that crafting system, you can create stew, which is a little bit more towards hunger, where if you cook with more meats, that's what you get. If you cook with more vegetables, you get broth.
Okay.
But then within that also there's magic mushrooms and things like that, which is the way that you craft buff elixirs.
Okay.
And yeah,
cool.
That's sort of how that system works.
Well, how about after this crowd, we can call it a video. Or there you go.
That's a good way to end it.
We'll get that lantern later. Cool. Well, so we finally have a release date for Below from Capy, Kris Piotrowski, and it is December 14th, Xbox One, PC.
Yes, it's coming out for Xbox One and PC. It's coming out for Xbox X. There's like a nice 4K build. Cool. And the game looks super delicious in 4K.
I was gonna say it looks amazing right now too.
Because it has like the small art style. We started this game before 4K existed, so one of the few benefits of working on a game for a really long time is that new TV technology is invented.
Yeah. Okay.
And for a game that's really small scale, it looks delicious in 1080p as well. Like it's nice and crisp. But when you do see it in 4K, it's like the little characters' peg legs are like super noticeable, and the blades of grass look sharp enough to shave with. And
cool.
There's a nice unintentional benefit. It's almost like we intentionally made a game for 4K without actually planning for it.
Didn't. But Kris, thank you so much for stopping by and showing us Below. It comes out next week. Finally, we'll all get to play it. If you were watching this, thanks so much for joining us. You can go get Below on December 14th on Xbox One, Xbox One X, and PC. I highly recommend it from everything I've seen, and we'll see you around GameSpot.